Thank you for receiving me. I'd like to know at first what is the landscape of university here in Kazakhstan. How many students do you have here in Kazakhstan University?
Right. Well, thank you for being with us today. So for the time being, we have 119 higher education institutions in Kazakhstan. And number has diminished actually. In 90s, we had a big boost of private universities, but we lost the quality. So beginning from 2010, we had to come down really hard on closing certain private universities so that we focus on quality. So we have 119 university and about 626,000 higher education students, college level students, which is quite high number. I mean, we basically cover about 62% of all high school graduates by higher education.
Oh.
I mean, if you compare it relatively and comparably, we're quite high on providing access to higher education. Certain countries, I mean, you take, well, there are some overpopulated countries like India where the access to higher education is very, very strict, it's very narrow, and it's really difficult to get into college. Indonesia, China, big countries, Southeast Asia. But when you take OECD countries, South Korea, Japan, European countries, the access to higher education is quite high. Roughly on average is about 60-70%. So basically we are, if you take that particular indicator, access to higher education, we are an OECD level country in that sense.
Okay.
And of course, the quality is the biggest concern. We have a very interesting situation in Kazakhstan. So if you take higher education model, it is a Frankenstein. It's still in transit between that old Soviet model, where all the universities were owned by the government. We had only public universities.
Okay.
And then the contents of higher education was strictly governed and managed by Ministry of Education. So it's an apex structured vertical system where you have almighty Ministry of Education, which controls everything, the content of education, HR policies, academic policies. So that was the Soviet model. Then in 90s, we introduced private universities. So we have decentralized, there was some big reforms to decentralize the higher education. Then we joined the Bologna process, so the contents now is in compliance with international standards. We have standard 4-year bachelor, we have 1-2-year master level and PhD, so it's a tertiary education model in accordance with Bologna process. Now, in 30 years, about more than half of universities are now private, about 55%, and about 60% of all our students are now receiving education in private universities. So it's quite an interesting situation where you still have that old, traditional, very vertically structured model, and then there are big attempts to decentralize it. So we're now giving much more flexibility to universities, giving them much more academic freedom. So the big reform has started with President Tokayev's vision about 2 years ago to decentralize higher education, to focus on quality, to focus on university research and creating as many research-intensive universities as possible. And one of the decisions was to split the Ministry of Education and Science. So we had one ministry who was in charge of preschool, higher education, primary, secondary education, and science, almighty. Now, last year, the president made a decision to split this ministry into 2 separate entities. So now we have Ministry of Enlightenment in charge of preschool and school education, and then we have our Ministry of Science and Higher Education in charge of higher education, science, research, R&D policy, and language policy. So a very new ministry. We have 1 year, 4 months old. So I'm a young and new minister as well.
So in the last 2 years, you want to improve quality. What results do you have so far? Are you happy with what happened in the last 2 years? I know it's been a year. But
Yeah, it's been a year.
Right now, you can have statistics, and maybe you can give us an insight.
We already made some significant results, in fact, despite being a young ministry. and focus, it helps you a lot. So now I don't have to worry about the schools and primary and preschool and vocational training. I focus on universities and I focus on research institutions. I would highlight several achievements so far. One important, we made this really large step in further decentralization of our higher education. We gave as much autonomy and flexibility to our higher education institutions as possible. So we've amended that old Soviet standard. It's called state standard. It basically ties hands of all the universities. You have to, your contents, your academic policies have to comply very strictly, quite strictly, with that state standard. So it's basically like a school policy system. You go to, in many countries, national curricula defines the content of education in the schools, right? All the schools have to comply with national curricula. In higher education, in Kazakhstan, before the last year, there was this very strict national curricula, and all the universities had to comply with that. So we have changed that. Starting from this year, 92%, up to 92% of the curricula, of the contents, can be defined by university.
Okay.
And that is very important with the second result we had. We were creating what we call Atlas of New Skills and Jobs. So this was my personal research project.
Okay.
I started it about 7 years ago. We started looking into changing labor market landscape, changing demands and skills and jobs in labor market. So about in 2019, the president made a decision to start a national level toolkit, Atlas of New Skills and Jobs of Kazakhstan. So we made this very big nationwide research. What is changing in different sectors of economy? What new skills, what new jobs are in demand? Which jobs will die off? We call them retiring jobs.
Okay.
Which jobs will transform? So now we took this reform and brought it to national level. So now universities are updating their curricula, and they have flexibility to update their curricula, to play with terms. For example, bachelor was 4 years. We now allow universities to change that 3 years, 3.5 years. For example, the university we are sitting here, it's called Astana IT University. Their bachelor's in computer engineering is 3 years old. It's 3 years only, because the employers, the IT industry says, well, 4 years is too long for me. The change and pace of change of technologies is so fast. I need to have these graduates quicker, much faster than 4 years. So we are amended that, we decentralized that. Another big change happened in an R&D policy. So we basically changing that old Soviet research model, which depended heavily on closed research institutions and national lab systems. We are now giving more focus to university science. Because if you look at different countries, most of the most innovative countries, America, European countries, France is a good example, South Korea, Japan, Israel, Finland, Switzerland, Taiwan, they make focus on research-intensive universities. And in America, US is best example of that. MIT, Stanford, they're becoming these huge innovation and research hubs. And these large corporations rely on universities to have applied research, to have a joint collaboration and R&D development plans. So now we have handpicked 15 universities. We focus on them to create research-intensive universities.
Okay.
And partnership with foreign universities is a big part of that agenda as well.
So you try to focus on specialties. It's the university adapts to the market.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I know science is very important here in Kazakhstan. You're the Ministry of Science and Higher Education. What is the importance of science in the work, in the labor here in Kazakhstan? And what kind of fields at university do you want to develop more in this science
Right.
field?
So one of the key reforms in R&D policy and research policy now is to make science as applied, as applicable as possible.
Okay.
There's a great book written by Carolyn Wagner called The New Age of Invisible College, and she argues, well, there is big science, what we call big science, and in 20th century, science paid off, like A-bomb, space exploration, there were billions and billions of investment in big science, or inquisitive science, the science of unknown, so-called astrophysics, neutrons, nuclear physics, material science and things like that. But it requires a lot of fundamental science, a lot of investments, and a lot of time. So not many countries can allow to invest billions and billions of dollars of research in fundamental science. So there are like not that many countries left in the world now. It's the US, it's China, it's the European Union, some European countries. France is a good example of that. But even European Union is now needs to join their forces and create programs like Eurofusion, Horizon Europe to join and collaborate in creating this big science, like CERN, Center in Switzerland is a good example of that. But middle countries and smaller countries, we don't have that kind of resources. So we need to rely on our partnerships with big countries who can do and conduct fundamental science. And we have to focus more on our economy. So the biggest change which is happening right now in Kazakhstan, we focus our science and research efforts on certain focus areas. There are about 6, 7 of them.
Okay.
So, and before that, there were there were 96 scientific priorities.
And what are these priorities?
And there are too many. When you have like that Stephen Covey, that famous guru on efficiency, personal efficiency, he had that famous phrase, when you have too many top priorities, you have none. So we decided to focus on 6, 7. One is energy. We are oil and gas exporting country, but we do really need to think about alternative energy, because the oil and gas, there's a general big obligation from United Nations on SDGs, on green economy, on decarbonization. We are part of that global agenda. So we really need to focus on alternative energy. And there's a huge project we're starting in west of Kazakhstan, Svevin, that German-Swedish consortia is launching a project on green hydrogen production. And one of our universities in West, in Aktau, Yesenov University, will be think tank and a research center for that big project. And we're allocating a lot of resources for that. And we're partnering with 4 leading German technical universities to create a research hub. Second area is communications, telecom. Being a big country, we really need to think about more efficient communication sector. Big country, scarce population, the quality of connections, it's quite important. So here, satellites, space industry, Starlink, space communications is becoming quite important. And thanks God, we have Baikonur. We have the very first space launch cosmodrome in the world, basically, in space exploration history. It's in south of Kazakhstan. So there is a potential for space industry, space communications. Third area is agriculture. We are heavily, historically, agriculture country. Fourth is transportation and logistics, being the hub, transportation logistics hub. And there's a notion of middle corridor now. So China is still keen and focused on Belt and Road Initiative, and they're looking to Kazakhstan as this huge logistics hub. You know how they call Kazakhstan in their Belt and Road? No. It's buckle of the belt. We're right in the buckle of the belt. We're right in the middle. Yeah. We're right in the middle. So they think of us as this connecting tissue of that Belt and Road Initiative. And fifth is healthcare, biotech, medicine. It's still a big part of our research. And the last one I would call IT. It's actually one of the key top priorities, but I named it. I mentioned it last. We made quite big breakthrough in information technology, especially in fintech area and financial technology.
Yes.
We have one of the very first digital banks, the Kaspi Bank. Our e-government system and in public services, electronic services are considered in top 10 by IDC, informational, and United Nations UNIDO industry organization. We also made quite a big investment in IT education. We are partnering with Huawei and Google and Binance to creating a lot of research and academic programs. Just to give a quick example, we have partnered with Binance.
Yes.
So we would be the very first.
Crypto money.
Yes, blockchain.
Yeah.
We will be the first nation in the world to launch an official formal degree program in blockchain engineering and blockchain compliance in partnership with Binance.
Oh, yes.
So these 6, 7 big priority areas, that's where we want to focus our research. That's where we want to focus efforts of our scientific community and universities.
And you just told me that you had partnership with a German university
Yes.
in the special field of green energy. How do you partner with French universities on what are your main university partnership in the world? USA maybe as well? What do you especially do in France? I'm interested by that.
Well, we diversify. We call it education diplomacy. You know, Kazakhstan lives in a very complex neighborhood, so we have to diversify. We have to be as flexible as possible. And basically, President has 2 years ago he said we need to invite top universities to Kazakhstan, and so that they open up their branches and create joint programs. Last year, we opened 4 big branches, 2 Russian, Moscow Engineering and Physics in Almaty, that famous oil and gas, Gubkin University in Atrau in west of Kazakhstan, University of Arizona, for the very first time, an American university, opened up a branch up north in the city of Petropavlovsk, and De Montfort University, a British university, opened up a proper big branch office in Almaty. This year we're opening 6 more, and our policy is, as I said, education diplomacy. We're trying to balance. So it's American, European, Chinese, Turkish, Russian, our main partners. So we're opening up a Turkish branch in south of Kazakhstan, pedagogical. We're opening up, I just came back from Kızılorda, we opened up a School of Artificial Intelligence in partnership with Seoul Tech, South Korean National University of Science and Technology in south of Kazakhstan. Harriet Watt, the oldest British university, Scottish Technical University, is opened up in west of Kazakhstan. Now coming to France, well, it's quite strong. We have about 86 joint programs and partnership programs with French universities, mostly with our regional universities. Back in 2014, we opened up a Sorbonne Institute in Almaty in partnership with our National Pedagogical University. It's our oldest university. We're celebrating 100 years, their 100th anniversary very soon. And the main focus of the program was French language program, sociology, political science, so mostly social sciences.
Yes, it's not what you focus on today.
And it's a pity, it's a huge pity that we do not use our partnership to full potential, because France, of course, language is important, social dimension is important, but France is spearheading. It's one of the top European and global economies in communications and space, and Airbus headquarters in Toulouse, in genetics and biotechnology and agriculture and communications and transportation, with Alstom spearheading. So it's funny enough, French business are quite active in Kazakhstan with Alstom, with partnership with our national railway system, defense industry, and the space exploration satellite with several French big companies. but the level of academic partnership is not there yet. So it was very important that President Macron's visit was signed.
And it was mostly about language again.
But it was mostly about language. But but most importantly, we agreed that we would create a working group now with French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, again with education and local embassy. And local embassy, French embassy, is very active in Kazakhstan. You have to give thanks to Didier, His Excellency, Ambassador and his team. That we create a working group and we start working on creating a full-time Kazakh-French research university, focusing on 3 major areas. One is energy with special focus on nuclear energy. And I know nuclear energy is becoming a big deal in Kazakh-French relationships. It was part of the negotiations of President Macron. And we have plans to invest in nuclear energy as well. And France is potentially a very good major partner in energy sector, and Total in oil and gas, of course. Second focus is telecommunications and space industry. So our National Space Agency and Ministry of Digital Development, they already been working with several French companies on space communications, training personnel for satellites, and so on and so forth. And third is agriculture and biotech. Here we are working with several universities in Lorraine, Toulouse, Paris-Saclay. There is a special project we have with medical center of Gustave Roset Center on cancer research. So last year we sent 6 of our scholars to that special lab to do cancer research. This would be, and there's a fourth dimension is telecommunications, programming. École 42, there's famous programming coding school in Paris. About 4 years ago, we've opened a branch of École 42 in Astana, which is actually very close to IT University. If you have time, it's about 200 meters away from here. You could visit that school, and it's run in partnership with École's founder, Nicolas. What was his name?
I don't know his name.
That's his surname. His name is Nicolas. He came to Kazakhstan, so they still part of that project. So coding and programming, it's a big thing. And as I said, our special focus is on developing IT and artificial intelligence. And for artificial intelligence, last year we signed an agreement with a special center at Toulouse University. It's Advanced Artificial Intelligence Research Center. And we already sent 2 researchers right now in Toulouse studying and collaborating with French scientists.
Okay, one last question, sir. Based on your background, I know you've been involved in the field of education for a long time. How do you see personally the evolution of higher education here in Kazakhstan? And can you tell me maybe more about your background?
Sure. Well, I did. All my life is connected to education and higher education mostly. I studied a lot abroad. I graduated from U.S. college, and you could tell it from my accent. You can't hide that. Political science. I did my master's in Rome, La Sapienza University, in geopolitics. I studied in Japan, Todai Tokyo State University, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore, Royal Dutch Institute of Public Administration in Den Haag, yes, in the Netherlands. So I've been in many. So I've seen a lot of academic and education policies, European, American, Southeast Asian. So that helps me a lot to combine different approaches. So how do we see education in Kazakhstan? And let me also go back to that important president's visit in Kazakhstan. Unfortunately, we lost French as a second foreign language. So I studied back in Soviet Union. I was born in Soviet Union. And there was a choice back in school, in Soviet school, they would give you a choice. German, French or English. And French was very important. We had French classes. There were a lot of universities who would prepare French teachers. French language and culture was an important part of Soviet culture. I mean, you take Tolstoy. When I was reading Tolstoy back in Soviet school, 30% of the book is in French. So I better learn French, because all these Russian nobility, they would speak, their second language was French, right? So it was very important part of Soviet, Russian, and then Soviet culture. But unfortunately, in 90s, what happened in 90s, the English become dominant, right? So and American embassies, British, they made it very quite aggressive. British Council, American councils, American corners, British corners, IELTS, TOEFL. It became very important. And unfortunately, in about 30 years, there were less and less schools who would give French a second foreign language. There were less and less universities who would have programs and curricula on preparing French teachers. And it's a pity. Why? Because French is still a language of diplomacy. It's still a working language of the United Nations. It's still an important, and most importantly, the Francophone, the French-speaking community grows. Yeah. Thanks to Africa, by the way. Yeah. Thanks to Africa. Because the population growth in Africa is just incredible. 1.2 billion people live in Africa. We have Nigeria with almost 200,000 million people, Ethiopia, Egypt, and it's very fast-growing community. So it is. I'm personally very happy, and my daughter and son, they learn French. I made them learn French. I didn't have a chance to learn, but you should. So I hired teachers and I paid them from my pocket so they could learn French. I said it's very important language. So
because it's not easy to learn French now.
And it's not easy because the environment is not there, and there are less. I had to find special, teachers to teach them French, and it's. I think it's very important that a decision was made to open up a French school in Astana next year, and then there'll be another one in Almaty. So our parents will have a choice, will have an option, alternative to send their kids to French school, l'école française, right? So I think it's very important, and I'm really happy. I wish
that's the first step.
I wish your decision was made earlier, because now my kid's 15 or 13, but if maybe my son, I would send him to that school. Now coming back to Kazakhstan's vision of education, we made several choices. One, we want to keep our national curricula as flexible and adaptable as possible. Why? And we want to have it very close connection, link with labor market. Labor market is changing really rapidly. The technology, artificial intelligence, this big revolution that is happening, basically says that people who do not master new skills, who do not learn how to learn, will be eventually out of labor market. There's an interesting report issued by IBM, very recent report. It's called Augmented Work in AI-Driven Labor Market. And it says the AI will not replace people. People who have mastered AI and algorithms will eventually replace people who cannot, will not, or don't have resources to master AI. So first, we keep our curricula as flexible as possible. What I try to convince my colleagues in the government, we don't have resources like China or Arab people, like billions of dollars in research and education. South Korea, they allocate 9% of their GDP annually on science and education. $2 trillion GDP. So it's $190 billion every year, right? And they have booming universities, big research centers, Samsung, Hyundai, Kia, right? We don't have big academic traditions like France, like Germany, with 500, 600 years long universities, platforms, academic traditions, the Academy of Sciences. So we need to leapfrog. We need to be flexible. We need to try new things.
But you've got a fresh point of view as well.
So we need to experiment. So that's one. Two, we focus on digital literacy. We believe digital literacy would be important for any employee, for anyone who graduates from college. Because if you look, what is the main task that any white collar college graduate does? Is working with information. So the ability and skills to collect, analyze, and prepare information is the key skill. I mean, even in your job, you absorb information, you take different information, you analyze it, yes, you compile it, and you bring new information. You add value as journalists. You add value, insights, points of view. What is important to tell to French people about Kazakhstan? So this is your added value as a college grad, as a white collar employee. So not only we introduced digital literacy courses, we partnered with Coursera, for example. So all our college students, Coursera courses are available to them.
Okay.
And they can choose any course of Coursera as their elective. And if they get the certificate, we credit them. So apart from elective courses that are proposed, given by our universities, we give them access to these big platforms, free of charge. And more than that, now we focus on AI literacy, because we believe AI is now becoming the new thing. So we've made this course with Google, in partnership with Google, called AI Introduction, AI Literacy, or AI Introduction. This year, 14 universities, including this IT university, is running this course as pilot.
Okay.
Next year, we made a decision to make it compulsory for all university students. So we want every university student, he might be a lawyer, international law, international relations, not an engineer, but we make this compulsory so that he knows about AI, algorithms. He can use these algorithms in his life, in everyday work. He can boost his productivity. He can become more personally efficient. There's an interesting national project initiative in Finland. They started it about 3 years ago in partnership with Google, Google Brain, and they said we want to have 1% of adult population to work with AI.
Yes.
It was very, extremely successful. Now they want 10% of all their adult population, and they give them free training so that they can use AI in everyday life. So we decided, okay, we're going to give that course compulsory and free to all our college level students. So when they graduate, they're now ready for this AI-driven world. And third, research. Research, we want to have as many students, college level students, as possible to stay and continue their research agenda. So right now, we're not a research-intensive higher education system. 626,000 students, about 92% of them are bachelors, 92%.
Okay.
6-7% are masters, and less than 1% of PhD doctorates. So that shows not many people go and pursue research. They don't do science, they go back. You take South Korea, for example, research-intensive country, very innovative. 52% bachelors, 42% master-level students, and 6-7% of PhDs.
Okay.
So we want to have more students engaged with research, getting more advanced degrees. And for example, we've introduced a very interesting pilot last year, 6 universities. The GPA, grade point average, is now calculated not based on their academic performance entirely. It's 50% academic performance, 25% research, and 25% social activities, sports, volunteering, community service, things like that. It already shows that some students say, hey, I don't have to study only, I need to do more, publish articles, seminars, conferences. So if it works really good, we're going to introduce it to all our universities. And last but not the least, universities increasingly becoming the centers of community service. It's called the third mission. It's a very popular concept now in higher education. So the first mission of university is education, second mission is research, the third mission is social mission. So they have to serve local community. They have to work with local community, help local municipalities solve their problems, come up with some scientific training, And just to give an example, last year we launched what we call Silver University model. So one of the regional universities now helping local senior community, people with silver university,
Yeah, yeah.
silver hair, to do trainings, to do some classes, upskilling, reskilling, because now the life expectancy grows and there's a new notion, 60 is new 40. So
Yes,
people
true.
in their 60s and now like back in 40s, they're still active, they want to engage, we want to learn. So now it was very successful pilot. Now 70 of our universities now launched their own silver universities. So they're helping local retired or pre-retirement age senior citizens to learn, engage, have some
That's
classes,
interesting.
learn web design, copywriting, social media marketing.
AI,
Yeah,
maybe on
learn
artificial
language.
intelligence
Yes,
as
so
well.
that they can, and they help to their sons and daughters, training and helping their grandsons and granddaughters to an old dog can learn a new trick. I can teach you some programming, right? So it was a really interesting project. So now we're trying to reshape our universities into a third mission universities as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for all these informations. And I hope I was very impressed by what I saw here in Kazakhstan. So thank you.
So we're a country on a rise.
Yeah.
We try to survive in this complex neighborhood. We cherish our friendships. And I was really impressed by President Macron's lecture. He was giving a lecture to one of our
Yes.
universities. And he said, friends values true friendship. We always help. We always believe in long-term relationships.
There's a long history between France
Yes,
and
and
Kazakhstan.
so Kazakhstan, trying to develop, trying to thrive, can always count on France's help. So we really, really value that our friendship. We value our strategic cooperation, and I wholeheartedly believe that the President Macron's visit will take this partnership to next level. Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.